Hi, my name is Rose Miles and I'm a youth and schools worker in East Devon, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how we deal with difficult questions that are thrown our way during our children and youth work. So the questions I'm talking about can span from tricky theological questions through to personal questions that might be thrown our way by children and young people, or just questions that we're asked where we just don't know the answer. So we're going to talk about a whole different bunch of things, but these are the kind of questions that might be thrown our way. Before we get into how we respond, I just want to talk about the fact that it is important that we do respond to questions we're asked, even if it's from the quiet kid and you can kind of pretend you didn't hear them, or from the really loud kid who you're finding is just disrupting. Actually taking the time to receive their question and answer it at some point, I'll get onto that, actually really makes them feel valued and is really important. It's okay to say, actually, that's a great question, but I can't answer it right now. Find me at the end. That's a completely okay thing to say. And actually, it's quite a good tactic because it gives you time to think of how you're going to handle that question. And you can always bring in another leader to do it with you. So always feel like you can do that, but let's address the questions that our children and young people have. Don't brush them under the carpet, no matter how uncomfortable they might make us feel. When we are thrown those difficult questions, there are kind of 3 steps we can go through in our minds to work out how to tackle it. The first one is to work out what's really being asked in that moment. The second is to decide, are we equipped in that moment to answer it? And then the third is to find the answer with them. So firstly, working out what is being asked. Now, there are times when young people and children will ask us questions and it's very clear what they're asking us and why they're asking it, particularly if it's related to a Bible story or text that you're looking at. Sometimes those questions, it's really clear and that's great, you can move on to the next step. But sometimes there will be questions where there's actually something going on behind it, particularly if the questions are very personal to you. If it's a personal question, it's really worth asking in your mind the question, why are they asking you this? If it's something related to relationships or substance abuse or whatever, and it's more of a how you live your life kind of question, then they might be trying to work out, hey, is this youth worker, is this children's worker practicing what they preach? They want to see where your integrity is at. So working that out is a really useful thing to do. The other thing they might be doing if they're asking a personal question is just wanting to connect with you more, wanting to hear a little bit of your story before they can then feel comfortable to share their story is something that quite often young people will do. So when there are those personal questions, it's really good to think, where is this young person coming from? What are they really asking in this moment? And one way we can find out what they're really asking in this moment is to ask them. You can answer a question with a question. Jesus did it. If it's good enough for him, it's good enough for us. But you can ask them questions like, particularly if it's a more inappropriate personal question, you can ask something like, why do you need to know that? That's an okay question to ask. If it's something else, you can ask them what they think. You can do that. There's a limit to this. We don't just want to be asking questions back because it can become kind of fractured. But asking a question in order to work out what they are really asking or what's behind the question is totally okay to do. So you've worked out what they're actually asking. Now we're going to want to work out, are we equipped in this moment to answer that question? So if it's a question where you just don't know the answer, this happens quite a bit to me, I'll be honest. Young people and children will come up with these questions and I'm just like, I actually have no idea in this moment. Then it's okay to say that. It's okay to say, I don't know. It's way better for us to be honest about that and be honest about the fact that we're humans and we don't know everything, than to brush a child or young person's question under the carpet or to pretend like we didn't hear it just to avoid our embarrassment. Like, way better to just be honest about the fact that we don't know. Another way we might be trying to work out if we're equipped to answer it is if it's going to invoke an emotional response in us. Sometimes the issues we talk about might actually be something that hits a bit close to home for you. In those situations, hopefully you've spoken to your team leader and they know about this vulnerability in you. In those instances, it's really okay to say something like, That's a great question. I don't really know, but let's find out. So off the back of us deciding that actually we don't know the answer, we are equipped to find out with them, but we don't know the answer, we can then move forward and try and find out with them. We've told those who actually, where we can't answer it because of our own baggage, we've sent them to another leader to be able to deal with that. But those where we can answer the question, we can then start to explore it with them, which is such a great journey to go on with them. And there are a bunch of different ways we can do this. One is to go with them to somebody who is wiser and who has more knowledge on the subject. So this is something that I've done a whole bunch, and I remember a particular instance when I was mentoring a young person and she threw me this crazy big theological question, which I kind of had some ideas about myself, but I wanted her to have more of like a variety of kind of ideas. And so what we did was we were mentoring in one part of the church building, and we went up to our church leader's office and we went in and we asked him about it. And we had this three-way conversation that was really rich because we had other voices in there. So it's totally okay to do that. It's also great to engage those around you. So if you're in a group discussion and you've got other young people there, ask them what they think. Find out what their ideas are. Bring other leaders in. Open the Bible and try and find what it has to say. Taking them on this journey will stand them in such good stead as they wrestle with these things when they're older. And finally, it's really okay to Google things, like that's fine. I do it a lot, and it's great to show our young people that that's okay and to be critical of what you see, because like I said, they're not going to be children and young people forever. Like, they're going to grow into adults who have their own faith, and these questions are still going to come up. And so they are going to need these tools to be able to answer the questions as they get older. If at the end of all that, you still haven't got the answer, it's really okay to say to them, hey, let me go away and I'm going to find some things out and I'll come back to you next week. That is something I do a lot, and make sure you do go back to them next week because it's also easy to forget. But that's something you can absolutely do, because sometimes you're at the end of a youth group, you're thrown this question and you're like, oh, I don't actually have time to deal with this right now. Go away, find stuff out and talk about it again the following week. So when you're faced with a tricky question, work out first of all, what is really being asked? Is there something going on behind that question? Work out, are you equipped to deal with it right now? If it needs to be sent to someone else, that's cool. Are you equipped to deal with it? And then work on answering the question with them.